Welcome to Home of Common Sense. Hopefully an awful lot being talked also by my lovely guest today. With the Pastel Girls today, if you're watching on the telly. I'm in pale pink, she's in pale purple. Former Conservative Government Advisor Claire Pearsall. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
We're dressed as girls today.
We are. It's sunny.
I've come as a girl.
Identifying as.
Going to talk about a trans judge up very later in the show. That will come up. Well, I mean, you know, I'm wearing flat shoes though, so under Eddie Izzard's rules, still a boy.
Oh, and so am I.
Yeah.
I mean, what is this?
So difficult to keep up with the rules. So difficult to keep up with the rules. So difficult to keep up with the extraordinary change that we are seeing on net zero. I mean, Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, Keir Starmer, they've completely doubled down. They're absolutely 100% everything they say, and an awful lot of what they do, but not all of it, some of it's very contradictory, committed to net zero policies. Tory party was, until Kemi Badenoch said about a month or so ago, actually, you know, this net zero target 2050 isn't achievable. We need to talk about that. She didn't go as far as Nigel Farage in Reform, who's been very clearly sort of saying that this is absolutely insane policy, as I've been saying for many years, and unachievable. But absolutely fascinating that the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, the day before local elections, in which many pollsters are saying that Labour will be doing very badly. And one of the issues, of course, is, you know, is people's sense of how the country's doing and where it's going, and particularly economic policy and people's cost of living. Key part of that is the net zero costs and the fact that we've got such high energy costs as a result of net zero policies. There's a clear link. But saying that people were being asked to make financial sacrifices and changes in lifestyle when they know their impact on global emissions is minimal. We're 1% of emissions, but also because it's not going to make any difference. And basically saying debates become irrational. People are terrified of saying so for fear of being accused of being climate deniers. Hi, yeah, that's me. And they said these are the inconvenient facts, which mean that any strategy based on either phasing out fossil fuels in the short term or limiting consumption is a strategy doomed to fail. How significant is it that not only a former Prime Minister, but a Labour former Prime Minister, who still has huge influence on his former party, has come out and said this?
Well, I think it's enormous for the Labour Party because Tony Blair still has a reasonable following within Labour circles, and people do listen to what he says. And I think the day before a set of local elections couldn't have come at a worse time for Sir Keir Starmer.
Do you think he thought that through?
Oh, I think this was very calculated. I also think that this is perhaps part of a way of getting rid of Ed Miliband. There is, you know, rumours.
Well, Ed Miliband and Tony Blair apparently have been long-time friends and allies.
Yeah, right to a point, though. You think, how much does Tony Blair want to make a comeback into frontline politics? He's always been there in the background. And if you're starting to then isolate people off, so Sir Keir Starmer will get rid of Ed Miliband, and
Tony Blair doesn't want to come. Tony Blair would only want to come back to frontline politics if he could be the president of the EU.
Yes,
he doesn't want to be in frontline politics. He wants to be influential, but he also wants to carry on making huge sums of money from China and whichever other dictators that he's happy to take money from.
Well, this is it. But you don't know what has been offered to him by Sir Keir Starmer in order to help get rid of people out of his cabinet.
That would be very interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, because I've always said, you know, I don't think Ed Miliband lasts the full 5 years. I mean, I'd be surprised if he makes it the year at this point. Same for Rachel Reeves at this point. Keir Starmer's going to look for people to blame. He's like, oh, well, that was them, nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Keir Starmer signed up to a manifesto. Ed Miliband didn't write the manifesto, Keir Starmer did.
Yeah.
No facts have changed whatsoever since that manifesto was written. Other than, oh, you're now the person in power, oops. Now you're having to deal with the fallout of these insane policies. Same with Kemi Badenoch. Again, she wasn't the leader of the Tories ahead of the election, but nevertheless, no facts have changed. People changing their view now. There's political expediency. There's also, there's been cowardice to this date, hasn't there? If Keir Starmer knows his policy's mad, and he's a clever man, he must know that, mind you, he doesn't know what a woman is, so unless the Supreme Court tells him. So it's difficult to know. Yeah. But you know, dump the policy, be honest about it, dump the minister who's pushing it, and be honest about it. It shows such a lack of spine, doesn't it?
It does, but it also a lack of understanding about what matters to people. And I think everybody does their bit. People recycle, people switch off lights.
I only recycle because I collect my recycling once a week and only collect the other bins once a fortnight. Otherwise, I would not recycle. Well, I'm telling you honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 bins.
Don't care.
But a lot of people
do. It goes into landfill. Who are we kidding?
A lot of people do care about that, and they do recycle and they do their bit. You turn off lights in rooms that you're not using.
They do that because of the cost.
But it
most
still fits
people
into
do
it.
that because they're practically required to, or they do it because of the cost.
and you go to charity shops to recycle clothes, you use textile banks and things like that. You don't just chuck things into landfill.
Yeah.
And I think that people are seeing that they do their part, but government is forcing something upon them that they don't want.
Talk about the heat pumps, the EVs, and all that. Again, none of these policies survive contact with reality. I've said that for a very long time.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because at the same day as this report was being made publicised, it came out early hours of Tuesday. Climate Change Committee, called the Independent Government Advisors. I don't know who appoints these people. I mean, the fact that the woman who chairs the committee hasn't even got a science degree. I've got more qualifications in this than she has. I mean, put me on the seriously. Put me on the Climate Change Committee. I'll get this stuff sorted for you, no problem. But they've issued a new report being very critical of the government, saying progress on achieving net zero, which is their raison d'etre, and indeed a legal requirement for all governments, thanks to the Tories. Thanks for that, Theresa May. The progress is either too slow, has stalled, or is heading in the wrong direction. And they say this could leave the UK vulnerable to serious economic and health impacts in the decades ahead. We haven't done enough investment in flood defences and things like that. But of course, actually, it's climate change policies, net zero, which leaves us very vulnerable, as we saw with Spain and Portugal with those blackouts. And it's not Nigel Farage saying it, it's energy experts. It's the actual people who run the Spanish electricity grid who say it's not lack of nuclear power. It's not it wasn't a weather event. It wasn't a cyber attack. Most likely cause was a problem with the intermittent sort of boost of energy from solar panels, from solar farms, and that messed up the grid. The grid couldn't handle it, and that is part of the problem of having intermittent energy from unreliable, insecure sources. The grid doesn't. Maybe they could strengthen the grid. I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert in this field, just like the Climate Change Committee and Ed Miliband, indeed. But at the end of the day, the most likely cause of those blackouts appears to be over-reliance on solar power, OK? So, but we're trying to move to more reliance on solar power than even they have in Spain. They're at 53%, and we want to go to 95% solar and wind renewables. Now, I'm sorry, the biggest risk to this country is net zero.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we don't have enough sun in this country. It's really sunny today and it will be for the next couple of days, but that doesn't last.
Yeah. And the reason we talk about it is because it's not normal.
Precisely. I mean, it's a very British thing to do, to talk about the weather. And they had to shut down some of the wind turbines when it was too windy and you couldn't put it into the grid. So let's get away from that. It is utterly, utterly ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things, Ed Miliband says he's in favour of this as well, and Tony Blair talks about, using technology, carbon capture.
Which is nonsense.
But again, it's
utter nonsense.
Also, what's going to possibly go wrong with burying a carbon underground? I don't know.
It's not worked anywhere.
But exactly. But I mean, but AI and whatever it is. Look, when the technology appears, we'll all move to it. Because it will be better and cheaper and everything, but it hasn't. It's not there yet. But you can't force that technology. I'm all for government investment in that technology, but don't force us to change. And bearing in mind, the Climate Change Committee has been very, very clear. They put it in black and white. It's not me saying it. The Climate Change Committee has been really clear. Things that will need to be done for us to go even close to net zero targets. Limit on you being able to fly. Limit on you using your own car. Having to buy an EV car, but possibly not even being allowed to, being able to afford to drive your EV car. Limiting your dairy and your meat intake, things like that. Having to have a heat pump that doesn't actually heat your home in winter. Brilliant. We are talking about major impacts on our lifestyle. People simply won't put up with it. It doesn't survive an election when people know the reality. And as each of these policies gets the targets, well, they were 10 years away and they were 5 years away. When these targets start becoming real, each time the government backs away from them. And it doesn't matter the political hue of the party, because they realise these are absolutely catastrophic when it comes to public support. But I wonder how much Tony Blair's intervention is going to make a difference. I want to hear from you on this. I mean, I think we're all surprised he hasn't suggested digital ID cards as the answer to net zero but in climate change. I mean, I'm amazed he hasn't thought of that. But he says net zero is irrational, it's doomed to fail. He's still signed up to the whole climate change, but let's just not be hysterical about it. Let's use tech to deal with it. I don't mind that. I'll take that. Politicians, he said, shouldn't force people to make financial sacrifices to meet climate targets because they know it's not going to make any difference. OK, what's your reaction? reaction to that? Why do you think he said it, particularly the day before the local elections? Do you think the government's basically, you know, Keir Starmer's kind of in on it, wink, wink? Do you think this is a brilliant thing that should be welcomed? Is it, you know, Tony Blair, well, stop clocks right occasionally? You know, I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message, but I realise a lot of you are now just currently sunbathing. Sorry, working from home. And may not be able to have the energy to pick up the phone. I realise that, but I'd love to hear from you. Let's talk about the local elections too. Last day of campaigning today. Not allowed to talk about it at all tomorrow, usual rules. So actually most people in the country don't have local elections tomorrow. No. I mean, even some of the places that were supposed to have them, they've been delayed for a couple of years because of various changes to the structure of local government. There's no doubt at all, Reform are riding high. Lib Dems are hoping to do well, probably Greens as well. The two big parties doing very badly. The latest polling from More in Common show basically from 1,700 voters asked who they thought would be most effective running the country. 41% said none of the above. The highest politician they put was Nigel Farage at 23%, Starmer at 19%, Kemi Badenoch way behind on 8%. The Lib Dems' Ed Davey was on 6%. But basically people are saying they simply don't trust anyone to run the country well. That's, I mean, understandable given how badly run our country has been, but it's also very dangerous in a democracy, isn't it?
It is, and it always worries me when people say that they're not going to go out and vote if they have elections in their area. And I always say to people, do be part of the process. Yeah. Spoil your ballot paper, it doesn't matter, but you need to be part of this. You need to pay attention because these people will look after the services that you rely upon in your local area. So
these are very real. They will be making decisions about, you know, possession, bin collection, street lighting, whether or not, you know, you're painting a zebra crossing in rainbow colours or not, how much money goes into schools, they are going to be deciding potholes. They're deciding really important stuff that affects your day-to-day life.
Yeah, they really are, and I think that people just dismiss them as, oh, well, it's not worth bothering about, it doesn't really matter, but it absolutely does. If you have children in school, if you want your local doctor's surgery to be able to function, your
local leisure
hospital, your leisure centre, cemeteries, recreation parks, all of those kind of things that are looked at by local councillors, and they should be invested in their local area, and it's really important that you know who they are and you can eyeball them and say, what are you going to do about it?
I mean, I remember when Saudi Arabia started allowing women to vote in local elections only, which is jolly nice of them. People say how wonderful it is. I just amazed by the number of people who don't vote. Always vote. When you have a chance to vote, always vote. And even if your vote is spoiling your ballot paper is a totally valid point. You know, if half the country did that, you know me, I think it should be compulsory voting. You get rights from living in democracy. You also have responsibilities, and one of them is just filling out a ballot every now and then. It's not much to ask.
30 seconds.
It's not much to ask, is it? Get your kids to do it. I don't know if that's illegal or not. Probably. I just want to talk about immigration as well. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, he has accused immigration judges of being, potentially breaching the judicial code of conduct, advocating highly charged political views. He says that basically, especially in some of these asylum cases and other types of immigration claims, they've been infiltrated by activist judges. I mean, I don't think that's even up for debate, given some of the rulings we've had. You know, Mr. Albanian criminal, kids chicken nuggets, and in Albania won't like them. A convicted paedophile being allowed to stay in this country because it'll be detrimental to his own children. Who thankfully he hadn't abused, to be separated from him, probably detrimental to have a paedophile father, I would have thought. But there we are, choices we make, everybody. But there's no doubt at all that even if we left the ECHR now, that's simply not going to deal with the problem, is it?
No, it will make absolutely no difference to this. And this has been something that's ongoing for a long time, that these judges are also part of either charities or other organisations which look after the rights of refugees or migrants. They shouldn't be allowed to sit on those judgment panels at the same time. They really shouldn't.
It's a political statement. They think that it's not political. It is political, absolutely.